I remember the Galactic Crusade as though it were yesterday, though 317 years have passed since its end. I walked among the chaos of star systems torn apart, led forces across countless battlefields, and faced enemies who would have crushed lesser beings. Victory was ours, but it came at a cost. Galaxy was saved, yet countless lives were lost, countless worlds scarred. Those memories remain with me, etched into the very fibers of my being. They remind me of what is possible, what courage can achieve, and what responsibility rests upon those who wield power. Now, centuries later, the Jed, I come to meet Age, not with weapons or strategies, but with a plea rooted in survival. Though the galaxy had known the unity and triumph of the Crusade, new shadows had arisen. Death stalked the surviving Jedi, fear haunted their hearts, and the enemies of peace, both living and undead, were gathering strength once more. Jesus once spoke, his voice trembling yet firm, "We cannot continue like this. Ordinary Jed, I cannot survive in this age. Death follows us, fear binds us, and the galaxy needs guardians who do not rest, who do not fear, who will not flinch before death itself." I studied them. They did not seek immortality for vanity. They sought a chance to endure, to protect, to ensure that the lessons and victories of the Galactic Crusade would not be erased by time or plague. Their request was profound, to create beings beyond ordinary life, to forge immortals who could walk the shadowed path without faltering. I sensed the Force respond to their plea. It whispered visions of what might come, a galaxy aflame with corruption, plagues, Sith ghouls, and the undead, challenging every civilization we had fought to protect. Yet the Force also offered glimpses of hope, guardians who could endure, warriors whose courage would never waver, sentinels who could stand where others fell. This request, I said, voice calm but resolute, is not without consequence. To create life that does not fear death is to challenge the natural order. These beings will bear burdens unimaginable, walking paths no Jedi mortal has ever trod. Are you prepared for this? The Jed, I nodded, eyes reflecting centuries of endurance and pain. We have seen fear destroy our order before. We have survived because of hope, but ordinary hope is no longer enough. We need immortals, not for conquest, but for survival, for balance, for the galaxy itself. I allowed the memories of the Galactic Crusade to flow through mid battles, the triumphs, the loss, and the lessons. I felt the weight of their request, yet I understood it was righteous. The Force does not demand we walk without peril, it demands that we act when destiny calls. And now destiny called not with whispers, but with the urgent, desperate cry of a galaxy in need. I grasped my staff, feeling its energy hum in resonance with the Force. Centuries of experience, battles fought and won, and the wisdom of a long life coursing through meal would guide this task. We would create beings beyond ordinary mortals, reborn as revenants, guardians who could defy death itself. I thought of the Jedi who had fallen during the Crusade, whose courage had helped secure victory, yet whose names had been swallowed by time. They deserved more than remembrance, they deserved continuation. We would honor them by creating warriors who could endure as long as the galaxy required, beings whose presence alone would stand against the tide of death. As Ilum's twin suns set, casting long crystalline shadows across the spires, I made a vow, whatever trials awaited, whatever forces sought to corrupt or destroy, I would guide this project with care. Wisdom and unwavering resolve, the Jed, I had entrusted me with their hope, and I would see it fulfilled. Thus Project Resurgence was conceived 317 years after the Galactic Crusade, a project born not of ambition, but of necessity, hope, and the courage to confront death itself. The first step had been taken, and destiny's currents began to stir. The Force was restless that morning. Its currents did not flow in quiet harmony as they so often did on Ilum, but surged like a storm beneath ice. I felt it long before I entered the crystalline chamber where my companions waited. Perhaps it was the galaxy itself holding its breath for today. We attempted what had never been done before. It had been 317 years since the Galactic Crusade, the war where I and countless Jed, I had fought side by side to extinguish the darkness that threatened all existence. We had won, yes, but victory did not end fear, nor did it silence death. The galaxy still bled from scars of old wounds, and new shadows crept at its edges. The Jedi who survived bore that truth heavily upon their shoulders, and it was their plea that had brought me here, to fashion guardians who would not rest, who would not falter before shadow, or flame who would not bow to death. On Mount Pinglai, in the ancient lands of Japan on Earth, my brothers Michael and Gabriel had claimed a relic spoken of only in whispers, elixir of immortality, a draught said to dissolve the boundary between mortal and eternal. Its origin stretched back beyond the memory of humankind, a gift, a curse from gods who no longer walk the stars. From Ilum itself, I drew a kyber crystal, luminous and pure, its song vibrating through the Force. These crystals are living conduits of the Force, and for millennia they had chosen Jed, I to wield their light. But I did not ask this crystal to serve as a blade. I asked it to serve as the bridge between life and death. I placed both relics upon the altar, the vial of shimmering liquid that seemed to contain stars within its depths, and the crystal, glowing softly with that unique hum only the attuned could hear. As my companions gathered, silence fell over the chamber. I whispered a prayer not of supplication, but of focus. Let the Force guide, let the Force balance. The ritual began. I poured a single drop of the elixir upon the kyber crystal. The reaction was immediate. The chamber filled with searing light, colors bending in ways mortal eyes were not meant to perceive. The crystal pulsed as though alive, drawing in the elixir, fusing with it, reshaping its very song. The air grew heavy with power, the walls groaning as though they too were witness to the birth of something new. The fusion was violent, yet strangely harmonious, as if two truths long kept apart were at last reunited. I studied the reaction with the Force, feeling it tear at the edges of reality, a spark of creation akin to the birth of a star. When at last the light dimmed, what remained was no longer crystal, no longer elixir. It was something new, something alive. We called it the kyber reagent. I held it in my hands. It vibrated not only with the Force, but with something beyond ether resonance that touched mortality itself. It was neither warm nor cold, yet it throbbed as though a heartbeat within it. This, I knew, was power that could restore what had been lost, power that could rewrite the rules of existence. Our test subject lay before you, S.A. Jed. I long fallen during the purge, his body preserved in crystal stasis. He had once been a knight of the temple, slain when the clones turned against their masters. For centuries he had known only silence and shadow. With reverence I prepared the injection. A single dose of the kyber reagent was enough. As the substance entered his veins, the Force rippled violently, as though the galaxy itself recoiled at the defiance of death. His body convulsed, wounds knitting with unnatural speed, his chest heaving as though drawing breath for the first time in centuries. And Thin-High's eyes opened. I felt his confusion, raw and unfiltered, flood the chamber like a tidal wave. He gasped, words rasping from lips long silent. Where am I? What is this place? Who are you? I stepped forward, placing a hand upon his shoulder, steadying him as one steadies a storm. I am Jesus Christ, the Jedi Messiah. You are on the sacred world of Ilum. You have been gone for many centuries. The temple you knew has long since fallen. At the mention of the temple, his expression changed. Pain lanced across his face as memories crashed back. The march of clones, the betrayal, the fire that consumed his brothers and sisters. His eyes glistened with grief, but beneath it flickered something else, defiance. You deserve a second chance, I told him, my voice steady. The galaxy is not yet healed. The shadows you fought once have not vanished. And now, you will stand again not as the man you were, but as something greater. A guardian reborn. He trembled, yet I could feel the Force flowing within him, stronger than before, reshaped by the kyber reagent. Death no longer clung to him. Instead, life burned through every fiber of his being. He was not merely alive. He was beyond alive. For a long while, the chamber was silent save for his ragged breaths. Finally, he nodded. If what you say is true, then let me fight again. Let me be what I could not be before. In that moment, I knew Project Resurgence had begun. We had stepped across the threshold of possibility into realms even the Jed I had never dreamed. This Manthai's revenant was proof that death itself could be denied, that warriors could rise again not as broken shells, but as unyielding sentinels. I looked upon him and thought of the crusade, of the countless lives lost, of those who had never been given a second chance. Now at last such chances could exist, but I also knew the weight of what we had unleashed, for with every gift of life comes the danger of corruption. What we had created could save the galaxy or doom it utterly. The Force was silent now, as if waiting. Watching, I ended the entry there, though in truth my thoughts churned long into the night. The night after the awakening weighed heavily upon me, even for one such as I, who walked through the fires of the galactic crusade and emerged victorious. The sight of death undone has no equal. The Revenant slept no more than I did. His very nature rejected rest. He wandered the temple halls in silence, his every movement echoing like the march of fate. Yet I could not let all blind me. If this creation was to serve the galaxy, it must be tested, not with words, not with theory, but with battle. The Revenant's worth could only be proven in the crucible of conflict. That morning, we gathered in the frozen chasm below Ilum's spires. Crystalline walls shimmered with alien light, and in their depths writhed shadows too terrible for natural creatures. For weeks, we had captured the infected husks, spawned by Etherium, crystalline corruption, unearthed by Sith sorcery in forgotten battlefields. Etherium, I knew, was unlike any corruption the galaxy had faced, a substance that tore the soul from flesh, reanimated the body, and bound it to hunger eternal. The creatures we held writhed in their cages, their eyes burned violet, their veins coursed with luminous filth, their limbs bore crystalline growths that pulsed like tumors of light. They were not mere corpses, they were Etherium's mockery of life, shrieking fragments of the people they once were. Their hunger never ceased. They clawed at the bars, teeth gnashing, eyes locked on, the living with ravenous obsession. The counselors who stood with me could not hide their unease. Even Michael, who had faced the darkest horrors in battle, looked grim. If he falters, he whispered, these things will not stop until they strip us all to bone. The Revenant stood calm, awaiting my word. His eyes reflected no fear, only a strange serenity like a warrior stepping onto the battlefield he had long prepared for. I placed a lightsaber in his hand. It belonged once to a knight of the crusade, fallen in fire and betrayal. The hilt hummed with ancient memory, and when the Revenant ignited it, the kyber crystal sang with renewed life. Blue light filled the cavern, the cages opened, the horde surged. They came with speed no corpse should possess, shrieking in voices that tore the mind. Their claws scraped stone, their crystalline growths glowing like embers. The Revenant did not retreat. He moved forward, blade raised, and in a heartbeat the cavern was filled with light and death. The first Etherium husk lunged. Its jaw unhinged with unnatural hunger, fangs dripping violet ichor. The Revenant's blade cleaved it in two, burning through crystal and bone alike. Its corpse collapsed in twitching ruin, the light in its eyes snuffed out. But more came, half a dozen, then more beyond. They swarmed from the shadows, their numbers overwhelming, their bodies clawing over one another in desperation to reach him. I feared even his new form could not endure, yet he did not falter. His blade spun in arcs of brilliance, severing limbs, carving bodies, igniting the chamber with every strike. One husk lunged for his throat, pivoted, slicing its legs out before impaling its chest. Another leapt from the wall, crystalline claws gleaming, severed its arm midair, and split its skull upon landing. He fought not like one who remembered, but like one who had never stopped, and still the horde pressed. One broke through, sinking its teeth deep into his shoulder. Another clawed down his arm, violet ichor burning into the wounds. The counselors gasped. I felt their panic rise in the Force. Infection was certain. Even a scratch from Etherium could twist a healthy man into a monster within Iors. But the Revenant did not cry out. He fought on. His blade cut down his attackers, even as his wounds glowed with the corruption of Etherium. For an instant I feared, then I watched in awe. The glow faded, the wounds closed, the ichor that should have poisoned him dissolved into harmless steam. His flesh knitted whole, unmarked, as though death itself recoiled from his body. He was immune, not only to pain, but to corruption, to plague, to the unnatural hunger of Etherium. He turned back to us, voice steady. I told you, I am not as I was. This corruption has no hold on me. Michael, still skeptical, raised his blaster without warning. A bolt struck the revenant clean through the skull. The Jed, I collapsed, lifeless upon the ice. Gasps filled the cavern. Some cursed Michael's ruthlessness. I said nothing, for I felt the truth even before it happened. The revenant stirred. His body spasmed once, then twice, before he rose again. The wound sealed in an instant. His eyes burned brighter than before, and his voice trembled with clarity. I remember everything, he said, the temple, the betrayal, the fire that took us all. I remember my death. I remember who I am. Silence fell. Even the Etherium husks still writhing in the cages seemed momentarily subdued. As though they too recognized what stood before them, we had done it. Not only had we resurrected life, but we had forged something that stood beyond corruption itself. The Revenant was proof that Etherium, plague that consumed worlds, was not absolute. For the first time, I dared to hope that this scourge could be resisted. Yet I could not silence the unease in my heart. Power such as this does not come without consequence. Today the Revenant stood with us. Tomorrow would he still. I write now with hands unsteady. We have created the first true enemy of Etherium, a sentinel immune to its corruption. But in doing so, we may have also forged a being that the galaxy is not ready to accept. Time will decide whether he becomes savior or shadow. On October 7th, we began the first of the extreme environment tests. The Revenant stood in the hangar bay, calm and unyielding, while Michael and Gabriel checked the life monitors and secured the experimental protocols. I asked him softly, "Do you understand what awaits?" He smiled faintly. "I no longer fear death. Let us see what lies beyond the veil of life." The airlock opened. In an instant, the Revenant was expelled into the void of space. He floated, untethered, no suit or shield, exposed to the infinite vacuum and radiation of the suns. Every law of nature insisted he should perish instantly, and yet he endured. Monitors displayed vitals that were not only stable but calm, his body impervious to crushing pressure, extreme temperature, or lack of oxygen. For 24 hours, he drifted beyond the confines of Ilum. He did not panic. He did not falter. When recalled, he returned unscathed, stepping through the airlock as though the void itself had been a gentle bath. October 8th brought the oceans of Mon Calamari. The depths there are unmatched in pressure, crushing even the hulls of starships designed for exploration. The Revenant swam unaided, descending into trenches where sunlight could not reach. His lungs drew water as effortlessly as air, and the immense pressure did not bend his form. For a full day, he explored the abyss, walking the ocean floor, observing creatures and terrain never witnessed by mortal eyes. He emerged from the water without fatigue, recounting the alien beauty of leviathans, luminous shoals, and coral cities untouched by war. The ocean, he said softly, is like the force itself, endless, eternal, and forgiving to those who endure it. October 9th, as we returned to Ilum, reports began arriving from distant worlds, strange violet storms, skies twisted by crystal-like growths, corpses rising as ravenous puppets. The name spread like a curse. Etherium, the force vibrated with alarm. Etherium is no ordinary plague. It consumes the living and the dead, reshaping them into beings of hunger and corruption. Entire cities fall, entire planets bend to its will. And yet the Revenant's immunity had been proven. Where Etherium touches ordinary life and turns it into monsters, he remains untouched, whole, uncorrupted. Michael spoke first. If the Revenants can survive vacuum and crushing depths, they may be the only force capable of holding the line against Etherium. Gabriel was less certain. Etherium corrupts not just flesh but spirit. What happens when it tests what makes him human? I said nothing. For the first time, I truly understood the weight of what we had created. We had built life beyond limits, but we had also birthed something the galaxy had never seen, something eternal. The Revenant's existence proved that Etherium could be resisted, yet I cannot ignore the unease creeping through the Force. The storm of corruption spreads, unchecked, devouring all it touches, and when it reaches Ilum, when it reaches us, will even the Revenant suffice? The experiment concludes, but my mind is unsettled. We have forged a being that can endure the impossible. But the galaxy is vast, and the plague is relentless. The Revenants may be the shield, but can they be the sword as well? The storm is coming, and when it breaks, only the Revenants immune, eternal, unstoppable, may stand against it. I gathered the Revenants in Ilum's training hall, a vast chamber of crystal and ice. Sunlight fractured across the walls in thousands of shards, reflecting the kaleidoscope of potential before us. I felt the Force stir through them differently now, sharper, more focused, a resonance born of life, denied death itself. Today, I told them, you will begin to discover who you truly are, not just as Jedi, but as Revenants, beings beyond life, beyond the limits of flesh. You will learn abilities no Jedi has ever wielded, and you will master them not with fear, but with purpose. Their eyes glimmered with awareness, minds unshackled from the constraints of mortality. Unlike ordinary apprentices, they did not tremble before the unknown. Instead, they reached for it, hunger in their gaze. The first ability I taught was Vine Grip. Using the Force, they could summon tendrils of energy, extending them across the environment to grasp enemies, objects, or even themselves. In practice, the Revenants pulled themselves up walls, ensnared test dummies, and struck with precision from impossible angles. I watched amazed, where a Jedi, I might pull a single object or push a foe. A Revenant moved with the fluidity of a predator, manipulating the battlefield as though it were an extension of their body. Next, they learned Revenant Weber network of energy threads that could immobilize multiple targets at once. I demonstrated, and they copied without hesitation, weaving the invisible strands through space, binding dummies as if they were caught in a net of pure Force energy. Their coordination was uncanny, each movement perfectly synchronized with their instincts and intentions. Even the Force itself seemed to bend in acknowledgement of their presence. Then came ground smash. I warned them, this power is destructive, but precise. You must master control, for indiscriminate force is chaos, not victory. They dropped onto the crystalline floor, and with a thundering strike, shockwaves radiated outward, toppling test constructs without harming the whole itself. The shockwaves seemed to ripple in the Force, leaving echoes of raw energy that spoke of both creation and annihilation. Finally, I introduced them to the most profound lesson, shape-shifting between human and Revenant form. I explained that their human visage was no longer a limitation, it was a choice. By adopting the Revenant form, they could access heightened strength, speed, and resilience, but at the cost of appearing otherworldly, even terrifying. They practiced alternating between forms at will. Their movements became fluid, instinctive, almost symphonic, as if they were no longer bound by the laws of biology or the constraints of fear. Throughout the day, I watched them train, a mixture of awe and caution in my heart. These beings are stronger than any Jedi I have ever known. They can endure the void of space, the crushing ocean depths, the corrupting touch of Etherium, and now they wield powers that rival myth itself. And yet I could not ignore a shadow lingering beneath their strength. The Force trembled around them, vibrant but unfamiliar, as if life itself were bending to their will. I felt a warning in the currents. Power unchecked can become its own corruption. These Revenants may be immune to Etherium, but what of pride, anger, or ambition? What of the hunger to dominate that can dwell even in the immortal heart? As the sun set across Ilum's crystalline spires, I gathered the Revenants together once more. You have learned much today, I said. You are stronger than any being has the right to be, but remember this, every gift carries responsibility. You are the shield against darkness, yes, but you must never become the shadow that destroys what you were born to protect. They nodded, uncomprehending to ordinary minds, yet fully aware of the weight of their purpose. They understood instinctively that power is meaningless without discipline, that immortality is nothing without purpose, and that even a force beyond death must answer to the galaxy it serves. Tonight I write these words with the echo of their energy in my bones. The revenants are no longer merely survivors. They are hunters, sentinels, and warriors reborn. They are proof that the galaxy can endure the coming storm, Etherium, that spreads unchecked across countless worlds. Yet I remain vigilant. They are living proof that death can be denied, but life, even immortal life, is a path fraught with peril. I have created guardians beyond imagining, but I must guide them, lest their power become a danger greater than the threats they are meant to fight. The trials will continue, and the galaxy waits in shadow, but for the first time in centuries, hope burns bright in Ilum. The revenants are learning, they are evolving, and soon they will be ready. The revenants and I have arrived on Coruscant, the heart of the Galactic Alliance, and once, the shining jewel of the old Republic. From orbit, the planet still dazzles, a sea of lights wrapping a world of durasteel and spires. Yet when we descended into the atmosphere, I felt it immediately, the pulse of sorrow beneath the brilliance, the residue of centuries of conflict. Coruscant is a monument to survival, but it is also a graveyard. The ruins of the Jedi Temple still stand atop the old plateau, silent and hollow, a scar left by the Empire's fire. As we approached, I felt echoes of the past, the cries of the fallen, the betrayal of the clones, the fear of the children. Even after 9 millennia, the Force remembers, we came not as conquerors, but as emissaries. The Senate had requested our presence to see, to judge, to understand the nature of the revenants who now walk among mortals. Word of our existence has spread across the core worlds like wildfire. Some call us miracles, others call us abominations. Both names carry truth. When the revenants disembarked, the city trembled with curiosity. Thousands gathered in the Senate Plaza to see them. Towering holoscreens broadcast their arrival across the ecumenopolis. Citizens leaned from balconies and transit bridges, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the immortals who defied Etherium's touch. I stood beside them as we walked through the plaza. Their armor gleamed faintly beneath Coruscant's pale sun, the Kyber, infused energy within them glowing through the seams like captured starlight. The crowd was hushed at first, wary and reverent. Then, one by one, people began to kneel not in worship, but in hope. I addressed the assembly. We are not gods, I told them. We are servants of the Force and of life itself. The revenants are protectors, not masters. They walk among you not to rule, but to remind you that even death can bow before will and light. The cheers that followed shook the plaza. It was not fanaticism, it was relief. In an age of endless fear, they had seen proof that the galaxy could still fight back against oblivion. After the ceremony, the revenants were permitted to move freely among the citizens. I observed them closely, documenting every interaction. Their behavior was extraordinarily patient, calm, compassionate. They aided vendors whose stalls had malfunctioned, helped repair droids in distress, and even assisted a group of children building a memorial garden near the temple ruins. I remember one particular moment with clarity. A young mother approached a revenant, her child sickly and weak from radiation exposure in the Undercity. The medics had done all they could, but the infection was spreading. Without hesitation, the revenant knelt and placed his hand upon the child's chest. The Kyber glow pulsed softly through his palm. Within moments, the child's breathing steadied, the pain fading from his face. The mother wept, clutching the revenant's hand. I am not a healer, he said gently, only a vessel for the light. May it guide you as it guides me. I felt the Force ripple around them, not merely an act of power, but of communion. It was as though the revenant had become a conduit for the will of the Force itself, bridging mortality and eternity. Throughout the day, they continued to interact with the citizens, and I noted something profound. The people of Coruscant did not fear them as I had feared they might. Instead, they embraced them. They saw in the revenants not horror, but salvation, the promise that even in a galaxy fractured by plague and darkness, light could still endure. But beneath this hope, I sensed the tremor again, the quiet whisper of imbalance. The force is never still. As night fell over the skyline, I climbed to the temple's ruins, where the statues of ancient Jed, I masters, lay shattered and half buried in dust. The revenants followed, their eyes reflecting the glow of the city below. This world, I said, has seen every empire rise and fall. It remembers every victory and every betrayal, and yet it endures, so must we. One revenant stepped forward. We will endure, Master Skywalker, he said, even if the stars themselves fade. I wished I could share his certainty. But as I looked beyond the horizon, toward the crimson glow that marked the upper atmosphere, I felt it a disturbance growing stronger with each passing ior. The Ethereum storms were moving again, sweeping through the core like a tide of rot beneath the glittering surface. The Senate, in its confidence, believed Coruscant untouchable, but I have seen too many ages to trust in pride. The light of civilization burns brightest before the shadow rise is to consume it. Tonight, as I write these words within the ruins of the temple, I feel both pride and foreboding. The revenants have proven themselves more human than ever, yet I cannot silence the voice within the force whispering that this peace cannot last. The people see them as saviors. The Senate sees them as weapons. The Sith, I fear they see them as rivals. If war comes again, and it will, Coruscant will be its first battlefield. The revenants are ready, but is the galaxy ready for them? The day began in light and ended in ruin. At first, it was only whispers over the holo-netisolated riots on the core worlds, strange lights in the skies above Coruscant. Then the transmissions turned to screams, whole sectors fell silent, and the force itself twisted like a wounded animal. The darkness had returned, not through armies, but through contagion. I watched the first wave from the temple observatory on Ilum. What the Sith unleashed was no ordinary plague. They had corrupted the stolen elixir of immortality with etheric essence, birthing something neither living nor dead. The infected bodies shimmered like molten glass, their eyes burned violet. Each one carried the dark side like a disease. We named it Ethereum. Gabriel studied the readings. It feeds on both matter and memory, he said. Every soul it consumes adds to its hunger. Michael clenched his fists. Then we end it before it learns to speak. But even as he spoke, new reports poured in Mon Cala, Corellia, Chandra-Leach already lost. The plague traveled through hyperspace conduits, devouring light itself. We could not contain it with science, nor repel it with the force alone. I turned to the chamber that held the Kyber reagent, a fusion of immortality's elixir and a living Kyber crystal. Its glow pulsed with the rhythm of the cosmos, alive, aware, waiting. For days I had refused to use it on myself. The experiment was meant for the fallen, not for the living, yet now the galaxy itself was dying. I heard the force whisper, "Become what must be born." I opened the containment seals, the air filled with song-high, crystalline tones that trembled in my bones. Michael stepped forward. "Master, the reagent has never been used on a living being. It could unmake you." I met his gaze, "Then let me be unmade, so the galaxy may remain." The syringe was clear quartz, etched with Jed, runes older than Coruscant itself. As I drew the liquid, it shimmered through every color of the spectrum. I knelt in the circle of the force and drove the needle into my chest, straight to the heart. For one infinite heartbeat, everything ceased. No breath, no sound, only light unfolding within me like a new universe being born. My body disintegrated into particles of Kyber dust, each grain carrying memory, faith, and purpose. I saw every star, every life, every pain, every triumph in a single instant. When I rose, I was not flesh. I was energy given form. My veins glowed with blue fire. My voice echoed through the very air. The Kyber reagent had not destroyed me, it had completed me. I was still Jesus Skywalker, yet also the living conduit of the Force. I raised my hand, and the crystals embedded across Ilum answered. Their light spread through the temple, racing across planetary networks, awakening dormant Kyber caches across the galaxy. Each resonated with my heartbeat. Through that connection, I felt the revenants, me creations, scattered across the stars. I called them home, children of light, I said across the void, rise, the darkness walks again, they answered. One by one, thousands of kyber cores flared to life. The revenants gathered under the cold sky, eyes burning with calm determination. They were no longer soldiers, they were an extension of my own soul. We departed for Coruscant, the planet below seethed under crimson clouds. Buildings burned in violet fire. The Ethereum had taken for millions of ghouls climbing the spires, their laughter blending with static. As our dropships entered atmosphere, I extended my will outward. The force surged through every revenant, magnifying their strength 100-fold. When we landed, they struck like falling suns, blades of crystal and flame cleaved through waves of undead. Streets turned to glass beneath the purity of kyber light. Still, the infection advanced. From the heart of the storm, the Shadowman appeared taller than any being, a silhouette of nothingness draped in tattered reality. His voice came from every direction at once. You stole the secret of death. Now death comes to reclaim it. We clashed amid the Senate ruins, his energy devoured, mine renewed. The impact shattered the skies, sending rings of fire around the planet. I felt the Ethereum trying to consume my essence, pulling at the light within me. I held firm, letting the kyber within burn brighter. Michael and Gabriel fought beside me, their wings of energy shielding survivors. The revenants formed a circle, channeling their own cores into mine. Together we became a single beam of radiant will. I thrust both hands forward, releasing the totality of the kyber reagent's power. Light engulfed the Shadowman, his scream tore the clouds apart. He retreated through a collapsing vortex, leaving only a red scar across the heavens. The ghouls fell silent, turning to ash. The plague broke, but at a cost. Half of Coruscant lay crystallized, half buried in silence. When the light faded, I stood alone at the temple summit. My body flickered between matter and spirit. The kyber within my chest pulsed like a second heart. I knew there was no returning to what I was before. The war for the galaxy's soul had only begun, but for now, the world still turned. End of research log 7. In the heart of extinction, I found not death, but creation awaiting command. The storm's roar has faded, but its echo still vibrates through the force. Coruscant breathes again. The capital glows beneath veils of glassy residue, its skyline refracting morning light into auroras that hang over the city. Workers move among the ruins, children chase repair droids through streets once filled with ash. For a heartbeat, the galaxy dares to believe in peace. I walk these avenues in human form, helping to lift rubble, calming the frightened. The warmth of flesh feels fragile now, yet necessary. It reminds the people that I am still one of them. When strength wanes, I shift revenant form, and the kyber within reignites. Beams rise, wounds close. The crowd calls it a miracle. To me it is simply duty. The revenants guard the perimeter. Their sabers hum softly, not as weapons, but as tools of light cutting paths for droids and supply convoys. Michael coordinates from orbit. Gabriel tends the hospitals. For the first time in weeks, laughter returns to the soundscape of the city. Yet beneath that laughter, the force trembles. At first it was a flicker on the long-range sensors, a cluster of crimson signatures blooming across the mid-rim. Then came the transmissions, distorted, echoing through static, fragments of screams and chanting. The infection is not gone. It has adapted. We have designated it Ethereum Variant Theta. Theta does not spread through the bloodstream alone. It travels through sound, through the harmonics of the force itself. Worlds untouched by the original strain now fall silent without a single spore detected. Survivors report hearing voices in the Staticom, ends in forgotten Sith dialects, before vanishing into the dark. Variant Theta's hosts are different. They move with purpose, organize in packs, use scavenged technology. Some even channel crude forms of telekinesis. They are no longer mindless. They are learning. Ethereum now seeks not only to consume life, but to understand it. Gabriel's latest readings show a disturbing resonance. Theta vibrates on nearly the same frequency as kyber energy. It is learning to mimic the light, That means our purification waves will soon lose effectiveness. The plague is teaching itself to survive illumination. Tonight I walked to the Senate Dome. The reconstruction teams had paused to rest, fires crackling in barrels made from shattered durasteel. A small girl offered me a shard of crystal she found embedded in the pavement. For luck, she said. I accepted it, feeling the faint hum of kyber energy inside. Even broken pieces still sing, so do we. From the plateau, I look skyward. Beyond the comforting shimmer of Coruscant's defense grid, I can see the spreading red halos of infected system. Siege, a wound in the galactic map. The pattern forms a spiral, converging toward a single unknown coordinate in deep space. Something there is calling the variant home. I will not let it reach us. Tomorrow I leave with Michael and Gabriel to trace the spiral's center. The revenants will remain to protect the rebuilding world. Hope must not vanish with our departure. The people need to see light walking among them. If the kyber within me fades, I will ignite it again. If the Ethereum learns our harmony, I will compose a new one. The force is infinite, and so must be our resolve. End of research log. 8 peace is the moment when courage catches its breath before rising again. The outbreak continues. Coruscant may have breathed, but the galaxy has not. Ethereum variant theta spreads faster than any organic or mechanical system can track. Entire sectors have gone dark, their stars veiled by crimson clouds and violet arcs of corruption. We depart at first light. The Elysian star carries the heart of the Kyber fleet, the revenants, and the instruments to trace theta's spiral across the rim. Michael monitors the signal pulses. Variant theta is no longer random, it has formed patterns, a lattice of intelligence guiding the infected dead. The Ethereum zombies are no longer aimless. They move, cluster, and adapt. Gabriel adjusts the resonance harmonics across the fleet. It's listening to us, he reports. Every energy pulse we emit is mirrored back, sometimes amplified. I nod. This is no mere plague. It is becoming a predator. The revenants assemble in formation around the flagship. Their kyber cores flare in unison, casting radiant light across the void. They are both army and beacon, illuminating the path through the darkness. I shift briefly into revenant form. Energy radiates outward from my chest, harmonizing with each core, turning the fleet into a living lattice of kyber light. As we enter the spiral's outer boundary, the nebula itself begins to shift. Waves of Ethereum emanate through the vacuum. The constructs we detect are both skeletal and mechanical, some echoing fragments of fallen starships fused into their forms. They rise, cluster, and advance like a tide. This is theta's new intelligence, coordination, strategy. Evolution. I reach for the force and feel the living pulse of the horde. It is learning, calculating, and replicating. Even here, in the emptiness of space, I can feel fear in its pattern, though not for us. It is afraid of annihilation itself. We engage in maneuvers designed to contain rather than destroy. The revenants sweep the infected into corridors of kyber energy, neutralizing them while conserving power for the inevitable confrontation at the spiral's center. Every pulse, every resonance, every blade strike is calculated. We are not merely fighting. We are shepherding a storm toward its heart. From the communications deck, Michael speaks urgently. Master, there is a signal far beyond the spiral, something waiting. I close my eyes and extend my consciousness. Through the swirling energy, I sense a presence older than the galaxy, bound to neither light nor dark, yet responding to theta's emergence. I do not know its form, only its intent. It will arrive soon. The revenants follow my direction without question. Their loyalty, their calm, and their unwavering discipline allow me to focus entirely on reading the force, interpreting variant theta's movements, and planning the next strike. I shift back into human form for a moment, speaking across the fleet. Be ready, I say. We are not the hunters. We are the shepherds. The storm moves, but we will guide it. And when the storm meets its match, it will find only light. As the day ends, the spiral tightens. The Ethereum constructs push forward, their coordination growing. The red halos of variant theta's influence spread outward, and I know the next phase will demand more than Kyber light alone. We continue, we advance, we wait for the arrival that will tip the scales. The Ethereum outbreak continues across the galaxy. Variant theta spreads faster than any containment measures, evolving and coordinating the Ethereum zombies with frightening efficiency. Coruscant's recovery is precarious at best. Michael and Gabriel proposed a desperate mission, travel to Earth, specifically Midgard in the unknown regions, to request the aid of Kratos, the ghost of Sparta. Immortal, unyielding, and battle-tested across countless ages, he has remained on Midgard for millennia, observing the flow of mortals and gods alike. The galaxy now requires his intervention. The seraphic vessel descended into the highlands of Midgard. Valleys scarred by ancient wars and jagged cliffs stretched beneath. The air itself seemed charged, resonating with energies older than recorded history. Lightning struck without warning, drawn toward a presence of immense power. Gabriel's voice carried over the comms. The force bends here older than any star we've traced. It senses him. Atop a towering cliff stood Kratos. His armor bore the marks of countless battles, chains wrapped around his forearms, glinting faintly with residual energy. The blades of chaos hung at his sides, coiled and ready, though he did not move. His eyes, hardened yet vigilant, scanned the horizon, sensing variant theta's influence even across the stars. Michael stepped forward and spoke the angel's plea. Kratos, the galaxy burns. Variant theta spreads through the systems. The Revenants and Kyber fleet cannot contain it alone. We need your strength. Kratos' expression did not change. His voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of millennia. I have walked worlds, seen gods rise and fall, survived the wrath of titans and the fall of Olympus. If the universe calls, I will answer. Show me this plague. Gabriel extended a fragment of Kyber crystal. Kratos grasped it with ease. Energy flowed through him, not awakening life long dormant, but focusing the immortal power he had carried for millennia. His chains and blades of chaos resonated with the crystal, amplifying his presence across space. Sensors aboard the Elysian star detected immediate effects. Variant theta's constructs faltered, the hive, mind coherence breaking under the weight of his immortal presence. Even from orbit, the Ethereum energy recoiled, destabilized by his mere awareness. Kratos did not strike. His presence alone radiated authority, will, and order. The Revenants aligned behind him, their Kyber cores synchronizing with his energy. Together, we form the first coordinated defense against this evolving threat. The galaxy still burns, and the Ethereum spreads. But with an immortal sentinel who has survived millennia in Midgard, hope is no longer theoretical. It has form, focus, and power. The galaxy trembles. Variant theta spreads with unprecedented speed, organizing Ethereum zombies into coordinated patterns, their intelligence evolving with each encounter. Coruscant remains under partial containment, but reports indicate multiple secondary outbreaks in the mid and outer rim. Kratos has joined us. From Midgard, he traveled with Michael and Gabriel through the unknown regions, arriving fully aware and prepared. His presence is immediate and undeniable, a living, breathing force of millennia, chains and blades of chaos resonating with Kyber energy. The Revenants assembled in formation around the Elysian star, each radiated Kyber light, harmonized by the crystal infusion within me. I shifted between human and Revenant form as needed, coordinating fleet maneuvers and monitoring the Ethereum energy spikes. Kratos did not merely follow orders, he acted with instinct and strategy, scanning the spiral's chaotic vectors, predicting variant theta's moves. The Ethereum constructs advanced toward the spiral center, but Kratos' presence alone disrupted their formation. The hive, mind faltered, energy readings spiked, showing destabilization. Michael relayed sensor data, Thea reacting to him. Thea recalculating slower than before. Gabriel added, it's as if they recognize him, not as enemy or ally, but as force beyond comprehension. We directed the first containment sweep. Revenants, guided by Kratos, moved along the outer edges of the spiral, using synchronized Kyber pulses to collapse Ethereum clusters. Kratos wielded his chains and blades, not in destruction, but in energy manipulation, redirecting pulses, disrupting the construct's coordination, and creating safe corridors through the spiral. Fleet maneuvers, I coordinated with him through the force, our energies harmonizing. Each time Variant Theta attempted to regroup, Kratos' presence alone caused their formation to ripple and hesitate. For the first time, the outbreak paused rather than advanced. Kratos' immortality proves invaluable. Unlike the Revenants, he is not bound by fatigue or energy depletion. He can operate continuously, redirecting kyber energy, coordinating movements, and maintaining pressure against the Ethereum without pause. His strategy is surgical, does not destroy indiscriminately, but neutralizes Variant Theta's influence, stabilizing regions of the spiral for further intervention. Even as we advance, reports from Coruscant indicate new Ethereum activity in peripheral systems. Variant Theta is adapting, learning from our interventions. The outbreak is far from over, but now, with Kratos alongside the Revenants, we have a sentinel whose presence bends the chaos. Today marks the first coordinated operation against the Ethereum spiral with Kratos in the field. The galaxy is not safe, and the outbreak continues. But the tide is beginning to shift. With the combined strength of Kratos, the Revenants, and kyber energy, we have hope that the Ethereum's expansion can be contained or at least delayed, until we can strike at its heart. The Ethereum outbreak has reached a critical point. Reports from the core worlds describe entire skylanes overrun with spectral fire. On Coruscant, towers that once kissed the stars now burn with violet haze. The holofeeds flicker with static faces of the infected, screaming before dissolving into dust and light. The Ethereum Variant Theta moves not like a virus, but like a consciousness and echo spreading through the force itself. Even in deep meditation, I can feel its hunger gnawing at the edges of creation. We have fortified key worlds Coruscant, Corellia, and Hosnian Priminto containment strongholds. The Revenants stand shoulder to shoulder with Jedi Knights, storming through the infected zones. Each one carries the kyber reagent in their blood, glowing faintly beneath their skin. They are immune to the plague, immune to fear. From the unknown regions, Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, has joined the fight. His arrival changed the tide. The force itself bends around his presencing anomaly beyond the light or dark. Where he walks, Ethereum burns away, as if the corruption fears recognition. Even the infected sense him. Across the data feeds, I've seen ghouls retreat at the mere echo of his war cry. We initiated Operation Dawnbreaker over Coruscant's lower levels. Kratos led a Revenant strike team through the Undercity, cutting through swarms of Ethereum Revenants that had learned to coordinate like soldiers. When the constructs began forming force-resistant shells, Kratos drove his blades of chaos into the ground, igniting kyber channels we seeded earlier in the campaign. The result was divine. The ground cracked, fire and force, light intertwined, the entire sector flared like a supernova, purified without vaporizing the planet's crust. Gabriel, watching from orbit, recorded the phenomenon, the kyber pulse synchronized with his heartbeat. He's not using the force is resonating with him. Michael theorizes Kratos is acting as a force sing, absorbing ambient corruption, converting it into kinetic and radiant energy. The kyber reagent continues to evolve within our Revenants. They no longer rely on commands. Their neural links with the kyber lattice grant them instinctive unity. In one operation, a Revenant squad shielded 1,000 civilians by forming a psionic barrier of pure energy, something no mortal Jedi order had ever achieved. It was a vision of what the Force was meant to be, not a weapon, but a will. Still, there is darkness gathering beyond our reach. The Outer Rim's spiral sectors, where the Ethereum storm began, pulse with increasing energy signatures. Variant Theta seems to be learning adapting to kyber resonance. Its constructs move like one vast organism, their screams synchronized in perfect, horrifying harmony. We've begun calling it the Spiral Mind. Kratos now leads the Revenant vanguard directly into the Ethereum maelstrom. He does not tire, he does not falter, where the storm rage is thickest over Malachor, Mustafar, and Dathomir. His chains glow red as the twin suns of Tatooine. I saw him stand before a breached cathedral on Coruscant, its spires collapsing under spectral lightning. The undead swarmingtons of thousands of Ethereum ghouls, once Sith, once Jedi, now nothing but hunger. He didn't flinch. He roared, and the storm itself split apart. For a moment, the city breathed again. I have seen wars, crusades, and divine intervention, but nothing like this alliance of mortal and God. The revenants no longer look to me for guidance. They follow Kratos as if recognizing an ancient truth older than the Force itself. And I do not blame them. Even I, the first to merge with the Kyber reagent, feel humbled in his presence. Yet hope burns brighter now. Civilians chant our names in the streets of Coruscant. Children draw symbols of the Kyber Star, and songs of the Ghost and the Messiah spread across the holonet. Hope is the strongest reagent of all. We have bought time, but the spiral continues to tighten. Shadowman's energy signature, S-negative force, reading shave, been detected at the edges of the galaxy, near the unknown regions. The war is far from over. The light of the core is dimming. Across the holonet, ghost transmissions flicker half distress calls, half whispers in Ethereum tongue. The energy signatures no longer behave like contagion, but as intent, bending subspace around infected worlds. Variant Theta is no longer the storm. It has become its own consciousness. We are watching the birth of a will. Gabriel detected the first anomaly near the edge of the unknown regions, a gravitational inversion shaped like a human silhouette. Kratos felt it before sensors confirmed it. He halted mid-battle on Coruscant's upper decks, eyes fixed on the heavens. "He comes," Kratos said, "the one who feeds on endings." Our archives call this presence the shadow mana being whispered of in the forgotten records of the Ethereum Wars. A parasite god that survives by merging with dying universes, twisting matter and memory alike. The outbreak had always been its seed. Variant Theta was never a mutation, it was an invitation. Within iors of detection, Jed, I across the Alliance reported corruption in meditation streams. Visions of mirror selves, infinite corridors, and voices promising immortality echoed through the Force. The revenants resisted, their Kyber, infused souls burned too brightly for infection, but ordinary soul-dear humans, Mon Calamari, even droids began showing signs of cognitive interference. Dreams turned into waking hallucinations, commands looped endlessly, the Shadowman was rewriting thought. I entered the meditation chamber and shifted into revenant form. Through the Kyber lattice, I could see tendrils of black, violet light threading through hyperspace, seeking minds to anchor in. Kratos proposed something ancient, almost primal, meet darkness with raw existence. He slammed his blades into the deck, channeling fury and memory through the Kyber matrix that lines Coruscant's foundations. For 6 minutes, the entire planet hummed like a living bell. The resonance purged the Ethereum from the upper atmosphere, temporarily severing Shadowman's influence. Our sensors recorded a phenomenon never before observed, a silence in the Force, no light, no dark, only stillness, a clean void, carved by will alone. When the pulse ended, thousands of revenants fell unconscious, Kyber veins dimmed, their glow reduced to embers. Even I staggered, the duality of my forms blurred until I nearly lost cohesion. Kratos knelt beside me, his voice rough but steady. "You walk between life and death as I once did. Do not linger in either too long." He spoke not as a warrior, but as one immortal guiding another. Coruscant stabilized for now. The Ethereum tide receded to the mid-rim. Naboo, Corellia, and Ilum report faint echoes of the same shadow signature. Variant Theta constructs are now wearing armor of crystallized Ethereum, resistant to ordinary weaponry, but vulnerable to pure Kyber resonance. We've begun forging Kyber Revenant blades, designed to channel both the living force and the reagent's energy. The first prototypes hum with harmonic dissonance, unrefined, but potent. Shadowman is not a god. He is the echo of forgotten fear. And fear can be silenced. Kratos believes the being must manifest fully before we can strike. That means the outbreak will worsen before it ends. The galaxy will suffer another wave, perhaps the final one, before the thinning veil of Halloween allows us to reach his core. I sense the pattern forming, outbreak, manifestation, purification, a cycle as old as creation itself. The Revenant Crusade stands ready, so do I. At 0600 IORs, the Galactic Alliance authorized the first reclamation strikes across the Mid-Rim. Our objectives were clear: reclaim Ilum, Corellia, and Dathomir from Etherium occupation, sever Shadowman's anchors, restore stable force flow through the core lanes. Revenant drop pods entered atmosphere trailing ribbons of blue fire. Each pod carried a squad of Kyber-blooded soldiers, synchronized to my pulse through the lattice. Kratos descended separate Lino vessel, no shield, only the blades of chaos bound to his wrists and the roar of entry heat around him. He struck Dathomir like a meteor. From orbit, the impact registered as a planetary heartbeat. Ilum was first to respond. The Kyber crystal veins buried beneath its surface began to vibrate, resonating with my reagent signature. I entered communion through the Force network, and for the first time since the war began, Ilum sang. The Revenants amplified the frequency, releasing harmonic waves that burned through Etherium spores. Purple haze thinned to pale silver. Frozen forests once petrified, thawed, where the crystals cracked, light seeped upward like spring water. Kratos' voice came through the calm, net, coarse but odd. The world breathes again. Corellia's shipyards had become Tomb's great skeletal docks, orbiting in silence. We found thousands of workers suspended in zero-gravity cocoons of solid Etherium. Gabriel and the med teams devised a method. Inject a trace of Kyber plasma into the cocoons while Kratos anchored the gravitational field. As the first worker was freed, she whispered, "I dreamed of thunder and light." By cycle's end, 500,000 civilians had been restored. They emerged pale but unbroken, their first sight the Revenants standing guard like statues of living light. Dathomir was the test of faith. The planet itself was alive with corruption. The Night Sister ruins pulsed with black, violet fire. Kratos and I led the vanguard through the forests, where the Etherium had fused with the planet's ichor. The battle was not fought with weapons but wills. Every step forward demanded resistance against hallucinations of the past phantom wars, lost comrades, voices pleading for surrender. Kratos simply growled, "They are echoes, strike true." With each swing of his blades, the illusion shattered, revealing the true terrain beneath. When I released the Kyber pulse, Dathomir's red sky bled into dawn. By nightfall, 3 worlds were partially restored. Holofeeds across the galaxy carried images of crystal light returning to Ilum, of freed workers saluting Revenant guardians, of Kratos standing atop Dathomir's cliffs as lightning crowned the horizon. For the first time in weeks, the people believed victory was possible. Children painted the Kyber star on their shelters. Pilots named their ships Revenant's Hope. I feel the reagent within me evolving. The boundary between my human self and Revenant form fades. When I shift now, it is not a transformation, but a resonantia reminder that life and death are frequencies, not absolutes. Kratos notices the change. "You are learning what it means to endure," he said, "not to live forever, but to remain unbroken." Perhaps that is what the Kyber intended all along. The reclamation has begun, but the reprieve is fragile. Shadowman has not been defeated, his influence merely withdrawn to the deep void. Sensors from the unknown regions report gravitational anomalies converging near the Old Ma cluster, a possible staging ground for his full manifestation. Tomorrow, we take the fight beyond the core. The gods will walk the stars again. The galaxy holds its breath. After the reclamation of Ilum, Corellia, and Dathomir, the Etherium tides have retreated, leaving quiet in their wake, quiet, but not peace. Sensors in the outer rim show gravitational ripples converging near the Old Ma cluster. We believe Shadowman is coalescing there, drawing on the pain of every fallen world. We have perhaps 3 standard days before Halloween, when the veil between planes will thin again. Deep within Coruscant's repurposed Kyber forge, Kratos prepared the transformation of his ancient weapons. The blades of chaos, once forged in godfire, still carried echoes of the underworld. Their chains hummed with old grief, but the metal yearned for renewal. He set them upon a slab of raw Ilum crystal. I stood opposite him, channeling the Kyber reagent through my veins, bridging mortal craft and living force. Light filled the chamber, silver from the Kyber, crimson from the godfire. The metal screamed, melted, and reshaped itself through resonance alone. When the glow subsided, 2 new weapons hovered above the forge, sabers of chaos, twin plasma arcs of molten gold, edged in crimson, their energy bound by spectral chains that retract into the hilt. Like serpents returning to sleep, Kratos ignited them. The entire forge answered with a harmonic pulse that reached orbit. Every Kyber crystal in the sector shimmered for a heartbeat. Chaos once destroyed, he said, his voice steady amid the rising hum. Now it defends. The sabers became the anchor of our new formation, order born from fury. Gabriel reports revenant legions rearming with Kyber, plasma weaponry, tuned to the same frequency as the sabers. Michael leads planetary evacuations across the core lanes, while the main fleet concentrates around Coruscant, Hosnian Prime, and the mid-rim bastion Iriadu. Civilians call the bright corridors of hyperspace the path of revenants. For the first time since the outbreak began, those corridors are free of Etherium interference. Meditation no longer brings peace. Each vision shows the same thing, a spiral of violet flame opening above the maw, tendrils reaching toward every star. The voice of Shadowman murmurs beneath the static of the faucet, imitation without form. Kratos remains unshaken. He feeds on doubt, he told me, then give him none. I try to follow that counsel, though the reagent within me flickers between light and shadow. I am both scientist and revenant, human and something beyond. Perhaps that duality is what the galaxy now needs. As the fleets align tonight, the stars over Coruscant seem to pause. For a heartbeat, even the holonet went silent. The calm before war had a sound hush of billions hoping that light would return. Kratos stood beside me on the command deck, sabers of chaos crossed over his chest. You hear it, he asked, the galaxy praying. I answered, then let it pray to its own strength. Strategic summary, primary objective. Contain the Maw cluster before full Shadowman manifestation. Assets, Kratos, sabers of chaos, Revenant Legions AG, Kyber Fleet Prime, Command Centers, Coruscant Orbital Command, Ilum Citadel, Dathomir Relay. Estimated enemy strength, unknown. Shadowman's energy pattern indicates exponential growth. The sabers of chaos remind me that even destruction can be reforged into creation. I see that truth mirrored in every revenant, every reclaimed world. The galaxy itself is learning to wield its scars as weapons of light. Tomorrow we move toward the Maw. If the storm must come, let it find us ready, our hearts burning brighter than the void. The stars themselves seem to recoil from the Maw, a black wound in the galactic map. Its gravity distorts even the holos, stretching them like whispers torn in half. We stand at the threshold of oblivion, the last frontier between creation and the hunger that devours it. Kratos, the immortal from Midgard, calls it the abyss between worlds. The Jedi archives name it the Void Rift. To me, it is simply the storm's eye. From every reclaimed system, fleets arrive one by one, their drives blazing blue through the dark. The Ilum Vanguard, carriers gleaming with crystal plating, their hulls humming with Kyber resonance. The Corellian Armada, rebuilt from shipyard ruins, led by Admiral Tarsaven. The Dathomir Warbands, which is reborn as Revenant Templars, wielding crimson energy bows that sing with lightning. Even the ancient Mon Calamari vessels, risen from deep oceans, now armored in reflective plasma, they gather in silent orbit, hundreds of ships forming a ring of light around the Maw, each one synchronized through the Kyber lattice. Kratos watches from the observation deck, the sabers of chaos crossed at his back. So many worlds, he murmured, and all have chosen to stand. Before battle, the fleet entered what we now call the ritual of resonance. It is neither prayer nor strategy, but synchronization, every revenant linking through the Kyber network to become a single luminous field. I stood in the center of the chamber, aboard the eternal dawn, palms raised, reagent energy flowing through me. 1,000 voices became one harmonic frequency. Kratos lent his fury, the angels lent their light, and for the first time, even the stars around them all seemed to pulse in rhythm. For a moment, I felt the galaxy breathe. We are not many, I spoke into the network, but we are enough. Scouts report the Ethereum storm coiling within the Mars heart. Spectral projections suggest a form attempting to emerge, a humanoid silhouette larger than any dreadnought, woven of shadow and fire. Shadowman is awakening. Our ships hold position in 3 rings, outer defense grid, Mon Calamari and Corellian cruisers forming the first line. Mid-formation, Ilum and Dathomir vessels equipped with Kyber lances, inner strike force, Kratos, myself, and the Revenant Vanguard aboard the Eternal Dawn. Gabriel calls it a wall of light, and for once, the term feels literal. Kratos joined me on the command bridge. The hum of the sabers echoed faintly in the silence. In my realm, he said, gods fought to rule. Here, you fight to protect. The difference, I told him, is what we become after the fight ends. He nodded, gaze fixed on the storm beyond the viewport. Then let us end it well. The air between us shimmered not tension, but understanding. 2 immortals forged by loss, standing at the edge of another eternity. Operational codename, Resurgence primary objective, prevent Shadowman's full manifestation. Secondary objective, contain or neutralize remaining Ethereum clusters. Reagent output, 187% lattice stable, Kyber network integrity, holding, Revenant synchronization index, 99, 8% near perfect unity. If we fail, the galaxy will fall silent for the last time. If we succeed, the Force itself will remember this night, as the Eye or creation refused to fade. In the quiet before war, I feel the hum of 1 billion hearts across the stars. They do not know me, they never will, yet I exist for their hope. Kratos carries his fury as a shield. I carry the reagent as a promise. The angels have taken positions at the fleet's edge, their wings of plasma folded around the command ships like halos of energy. The revenants hum in resonance, neither living nor dead guardians of the balance we once only dreamed of. Tomorrow is Halloween, the veil will thin, the Shadowman will rise, and we will meet him together, light against hunger, will against oblivion. The galaxy will not bow, I whisper to the stars, not while we remember who we are. The maw has opened, the stars bend toward it, light swallowed by the void. Every instrument reads impossible numbers, gravity itself is screaming. Fleet Command calls it a collapse event. Kratos calls it the reckoning. I call it the moment we were born for. Ethereum tides surge through hyperspace lanes, devouring everything in their path. The Shadowman stands at the rift's center, a silhouette larger than worlds, his voice a vibration that shakes thought itself. All creation will return to silence. The revenants hold formation, Kyber lattice at full resonance. We are the last barrier between being and erasure. The first wave reached us. Thousands of constructs, shifting between matter and energy, struck our defense ring. The fleets responded with coordinated Kyber discharges, harmonized through the lattice. Light spread like a living net, cutting through corruption. Kratos moved ahead of the formation. The sabers of chaos spun in his hands, tracing sigils of molten gold across the dark. Every swing shattered an echo of the Shadowman's form. He was the storm's heartbeat, and yet, even his fury could not end it. As the Shadowman's power grew, the Force itself began to fracture. Revenants faltered, the lattice dimmed, and for the first time in 10 millennia, I felt the galaxies will begin to slip. Kratos looked back at me across the comm feed, his face calm, eyes bright with something I had never seen before, acceptance. The power you created can restore balance, he said. Then you must be the one to wield it, I answered. No, he replied, I will become it. He stepped into the lattice field. The divine reagent responded instantly, drawn to his essence like metal to a star. Waves of Kyber light folded around him, merging godfire with crystal energy. The transformation was not agony, it was evolution. Where once stood a warrior now rose a being of pure equilibrium, neither mortal nor deity. but the living embodiment of the force is balance. His presence bent the storm itself. The void trembled before him. The shadowman shrieked, his form unraveling as reality rejected him. Kratos extended both sabers, now blazing with the full spectrum of Kyber radiance. "You sought to consume creation," he declared, his voice carrying through every comm channel and through the force itself. "Then face creation's will." With a gesture, he tore open a crimson rift beneath them, gateway to Tartarus, the prison of forgotten gods. The shadowman lunged, but Kratos met him head on. Chains of light erupted from the sabers, wrapping them both in a spiral of fire and crystal. For a breathless instant, everything paused. Then both figures fell into the rift, which sealed behind them with a blinding flash. The ethereum storm collapsed inward, leaving only silence and a ripple of gold spreading across the galaxy. When the light returned, Ilum was whole. The sky burned violet and then cleared to blue. The fleets hovered in perfect stillness. Every revenant felt the same pulse through the Laticia single word carried on, the force, endure. Where the sabers of chaos had fallen, the crystals of Ilum grew around them, forming a monument of intertwined red and gold light. Gabriel named it the Pillar of Balance. It stands still, humming faintly, a reminder of the god who chose to carry darkness away. The shadowman is gone, the ethereum is inert, and Kratos lives beyond the veil, guardian of the boundary between light and shadow. I remain to record what was lost and what was found. The reagent no longer binds me. It flows through all living things, tempering life with memory. The revenants serve as healers now, keepers of equilibrium. Each year, on this night, the Kyber fields sing with low golden light, echo of chains in motion, the whisper of a promise kept. Balance is not an end, Kratos once told me. It is the choice to begin again, and so the galaxy begins again.